Chapter 7 The Party. The bell rang, and amongst the clatter of students from other classes rushing out, Sora and Kyrie looked glumly at each other. "What now?" Sora asked. Kyrie looked thoughtfully at him as the rest of the class filed out. "How about more magic training on the island?" she asked, with a twinkle in her eyes. Sora raised his eyebrows before catching on. He nodded and began limping out, supported by Kyrie, Axel, Yuffie, and Riku looked on. "So," Axel stated, when they were out of earshot, "she's the fire that burns in his heart." "Yes," Riku said. "He'll do almost anything for her." He then shook his head sadly. "He probably wouldn't go to the darkness, though." Axel smirked. "It doesn't matter, then. That Maleficent knows nothing of the love. Even if she did, Sora would not succumb to her wish and become heartless. Or so you say, Riku." He then stretched. "Well, I need to alert the kitchens and get them to make creme brulee for the party. We'll have to make it for tomorrow because of the menu changes. I'll tell the two lovebirds." Axel sprinted off and bashed his way through the crowded hallways to achieve his objective. Yuffie sighed and shook her head. "What am I going to do with the cake I bought?" Riku walked up to her. "It's better than me," he said. "I have 15 apple pies at home ready for consumption. But now those two want creme brulee. What am I going to do with them?" Yuffie smiled. "I can help," she said. Riku looked skeptically at her. "What do you mean you can help?" he scoffed. "I thought you didn't like pie." Yuffie placed her hands on her hips. "I like pie," she said slowly. "I just like cake better." Riku looked at her in admiration. If Sora were feeling tip-top, he would definitely be helping Riku eat pie, but here was someone else offering her help. "Would you like whipped cream or vanilla ice cream?" he asked. Yuffie smirked as she allowed herself to be led away. "What goes better with apple pie than vanilla?" she rhetorically asked. She then became stern. "Remember, though," she warned, "I'm a teacher, so no fraternization." Riku grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Sora and Kyrie were slowly walking out along the road towards the beach, their backpacks on their shoulders. Sora was feeling better now that he had some time to recover some of his mental strength. They casually looked over their shoulders, seeing no one. They turned their heads back to each other, smiling. Sora took Kyrie's hand in his. Together they took off into the sky. Flying high into the air, they set a course for the island. Sora chuckled and let go of Kyrie, deciding it was more pleasant to fly on his back. He twirled around with his hands behind his head, happily smiling at Kyrie's laughing face. Sora let loose a chuckle of pure bliss as they flew over the water. Unknown to them, the school's blitzball team was practicing below, and Titus, acting on a dare, kicked the ball straight up. Waka and the rest of the team looked in awe as Titus's kick was rapidly disappearing into the sky as he smirked at them. "Dare to go any higher." Sora was calmly floating through the air, still on his back, when the white and blue ball, rippled with bumps on its surface, glided with the back of his head as he let loose a pained yelp of surprise as he looked up and saw the ball still going higher. Sora, hearing Kyrie's laughter, grinned at the ball and flew straight at it, grabbing it in midair. He turned around and called to Kyrie. "You think I should give it back to them?" he asked. Kyrie wiped away the tears of merriment as she nodded her head. The two descended. Needless to say, the team took Titus' challenge and began shooting balls as high as they could into the sky, unaware that two people were floating down to them. "What the hell are they doing?" yelled Sora as he dodged the blitzball heading straight for his face. "Do they enjoy tormenting us?" Kyrie looked as if she was about to answer, but had to flip to avoid a shot heading for her abdomen. "They probably don't know we're here," she managed to say, twisting around. Sora nodded and glanced at her. He shouldn't have. While he was distracted, a ball came and hit him in a very sensitive area for a guy. "Crap!" he said in a high-pitched voice as he began falling. Kyrie looked at him in a confused way. Why was his voice so high, she thought, watching him fall faster than her. Wait a sec, she realized he's not descending. He's falling. "Sora!" she yelled, flying madly at her quarry, hoping to catch him before he crashed into the surf. She blushed slightly as realization struck her as to how he could suddenly be in that much pain. Titus looked up in the sky when he saw all their balls would come back down, only to see two figures, one falling, one diving through the sky towards them. "Guys," he began, "I think we just shot down Sora and Kyrie." Kyrie dove through the sky as fast as she could, the wind pounding in her ears every second slipped by. She was gaining on Sora, but he was still ahead of her, about 200 meters off the surface. She was able to catch him in her arms, but only to bring him to a stop 5 meters above the team. They stared at her in awe, unable to believe that they could really fly. Titus looked as he was about to apologize, but Kyrie gave him such a death glare he quailed and fled to beneath the surface. Before Kyrie could torture anyone else with her gaze, Sora stared in her eyes. "Can someone get the license plate number?" he said weakly. "I've just been violated." Kyrie laughed as she drew Sora's eyes. Her pupils twinkled while she giggled at him, earning a smile and a quick kiss after Sora stood up again. The team eased a bit and clapped as Titus poked his head halfway out of the water. It was news to them that Sora and Kyrie were now together. When they stopped their moments, Kyrie smiled at Sora. "Can I kill them?" she asked him. Sora laughed as everyone, excluding Waka, fled underwater. Sora looked at the blitzball still in his hands. "Hey, Waka," he said. Waka flinched. Now we're going to get it, he thought. Sora shook his head and smiled at him while tossing the ball. Waka barely caught it. Shock on his visage. "Don't kick any more balls straight up," Sora chatted, amused at the team, before flying off to the island, Kyrie behind him. Titus resurfaced. "So they really can fly," he stated. They landed on their little islet Sora and Riku used to spar on, laughing like mad. "Did you see their faces?" Kyrie managed to choke out through the tears. "They were priceless." Sora forced himself to look up at the beauty that he had fallen for. "So," he said slowly, "what would you like to do now? More fire or something else?" Kyrie stopped laughing and placed her hands on her hips. She pursed her lips and walked towards him, her eyes twinkling. "Something else," she purred seductively, grabbing his tie and pulling him in. Sora did not need any further encouragement as she threw her arms around him, kissing him passionately. Kyrie's kisses were heavenly, he thought in pure bliss, kissing her back just as passionately. A fire rose in his heart, never wanting to go out. A noise broke them apart before they could even be forced by nature to stop. Even though they had broken the kiss, the fire did not die. It had stayed on, only banked, ready to flare up again in a moment. They turned and saw Roxas and Naminé with their arms crossed, glaring at the two. I thought you guys were going to train in magic," Naminé scolded, a wry smile on her lips. "Not practice kissing." Sora rubbed the back of his head, and Kyrie shuffled her foot on the rock. "Shucks. Okay, fine," she said calmly before turning back to Sora. "In response to your question, I would like to practice fire some more." Sora grinned, a pyro gleam in his eyes. "Fire it is," he said, throwing a maniacal laugh for good measure. Roxas raised his eyebrows. "I think I spent too much time with Axel," he said, placing a hand on his chin. "I seem to be rubbing off on Sora." Naminé giggled as Kyrie looked worriedly at Sora. "I think he'll be okay," she hoped, before summoning Island's fire. Kyrie looked her keyblade up and down, wanting to remember its image. Now I changed my keyblade, she thought, removed her keychain from her backpack, and looked down at the lucky charm she made. The 5 Thessalia shells made it into a star. She had drawn a smiley face on it. She smiled as she switched the keychains, Alan's fire becoming the Oath Keeper in a flash of light. The light distracted Sora from his twitchy fire frenzy, and he looked fondly at the white keyblade, his heart melting. "How I've loved using that blade," he thought. "It always reminded me of her, and I hope she uses it well." Kyrie suddenly felt more astute, keener to her surroundings. Her mind was sharper, stronger even, and it seemed to her as if her endurance had increased. "Sora," she asked, turning to him, "did you always feel like your mind had grown stronger when you switched keyblades?" He smiled, knowing that she had learned the trick. "Sometimes, yes," he replied. "Sometimes I felt more powerful or less aware, or a combination." Kyrie nodded, looking around, and spotted a few coconuts in a tree. She smiled as she flew up at them, batting them down with the Oath Keeper. Naminé, Roxas, and Sora raised their eyebrows as 4 coconuts fell to the ground. "What are you doing?" Sora asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Kyrie grabbed one of the nuts and chucked it at him. Sora caught it just in time to stall facial injury. Kyrie laughed as she gathered the others in her arms. "Target practice," she said, flying a ways off the island and dropping them into the water. Sora caught her drift and hurled his coconut as far as he could. It landed about 10 feet behind Kyrie's 3. She flew back and landed beside Sora. 10 points if you hit one of my 3, she said, making it into a contest. 20 if I hit yours. The one with the most points at the end wins. Sora laughed as he summoned the Oblivion. "You keep putting yourself in these situations where you're going to lose, Kai," he chuckled. Sora quickly closed his eyes and grasped at ice instead of fire. He felt the freezing cold of the snows atop the Sushong Sung Shao passed, the cool sensation of the snow beneath his feet in Christmastown. His cheeks grew rosy red, thinking about the cold outside of the jolly old man's house. His eyes snapped open half a second after he closed them and pointed the Oblivion's cold steel at his coconut. Blizzaga, he said. A large projectile of ice flew straight for his target, freezing it instantly in a block of ice upon contact. His spell broke Carrie's concentration as she looked at the floating ice cube, her mouth hanging open. Sora decided to switch to fire, feeling the hot fire from Mushu's muzzle, the heat of the Inferno's actual regularly summons, the intense ferocity of Hades' fireballs. Sora envisioned an explosions as he said, "Faraga!" with a loud blasting, booming sounds of shower of copper and golden sparks erupted from the explosions that occurred directly on the frozen coconut. Burning husks, bits of hot coconut meat flew in all directions. Sora grinned and lowered his keyblade, turning towards the stunned Kairi. 40 points. I win. Naminé scowled as Kairi was still incapacitated. "Sora, you scoundrel," she growled. "You're supposed to at least give her a chance." She nudged Roxas with her elbow. "Right, Roxas?" Naminé nudged him harder when he didn't answer her. "Right, Roxas?" She turned to him with her hands on her hips, pouting. By some strange fluke, Naminé hadn't registered the simple fact that Roxas was holding his sides in agony, laughing hysterically at Kairi's stupefied face. Naminé grew even angrier as she grabbed Roxas by the pained Roxas by the ear. "We need to talk," she huffed, while dragging him off. "You two are supposed to support you are supposed to support me, not your twinish brother, somebody." Sora laughed at Roxas's predicament. "Good thing Kairi and I haven't gotten to that stage yet," he thought thankfully. "Then you're lucky," came Roxas's reply. "You probably wouldn't like Kairi punching you." Sora raised his eyebrows and glanced at Kairi. She was still staring at the flaming coconut husk, while the 3 other targets drifted away. "Why would Kairi punch me?" Roxas's immediate reply carried a tone as if he was in pain. "Because Naminé is punching me," he moaned, "and it hurts." Sora chuckled again. "I can't take this anymore. I'm coming in." A blue light engulfed Sora as Naminé ran back over the bridge to the islet. "Sora," she yelled, "give me my Roxy back. I haven't finished dealing with him yet." "Don't let her in, 'cause I'm not coming out." Roxas panicked from the back of Sora's mind, fear in his voice. Sora cringed as he took a step back. Naminé glared at Sora. "I heard that, Roxas," she yelled. Sora gulped, his face paling. Nothing worse than an angry girl, he thought. Naminé's gaze hardened as she continued to stare down Sora. "Sorry, Naminé," he choked out, terror filling his voice, "but I don't think Roxas wants to come out." She readied herself, her transparent fist balled. "Then I'll have to go in there and get him," she growled, becoming a golden light that entered Sora's body. "No, don't let her in here. I can't. Oh, hi, Naminé. What a pleasant surprise," Roxas said weakly before yelps of pain started escaping from him. The whole scene that had just occurred was enough to wake Kairi from her trance. She looked around weakly, noticing that Sora was lying on the ground, laughing, and that her coconuts had drifted to the distance Sora's had been. She smiled as she raised the Oathkeeper. He had his fun, she thought, winning 40 points in 2 shots, but I can get 60 and win. She called the flames from within her Keyblade to her mind, ready for use. The searing heat bubbled and boiled within her as she formed 3 small fireballs at the Oathkeeper's white tip. Sora looked up, hearing the crackle of flames, to see Kairi's hands wrapped tightly around the angel wing hilt of her Keyblade, aiming at the middle coconut. "Fire!" she yelled. The 3 firebrands steamed towards their targets, hitting the surf a few feet to the left of each coconut. Kairi looked down glumly. She had failed. Sora saw the down-and-out look on Kairi's face. Quickly stood up. "No," he comforted, walking up to her. "Keep trying." Kairi looked up at his warm face and nodded, determination filling her. She formed her fireballs again and let them loose. It was a closer miss this time, but they had landed sizzling to the left. Sora put his fingers to his chin, puzzled as to why she couldn't hit them. "What's your dominant eye, Kairi?" he asked. She shook her head, not knowing which eye it was, or why it was important. I don't know. Why does it matter? She asked. Sora looked up. It helps if you aim better if you're using your dominant eye, he explained. Fortunately, it's easy to figure out which is your dominant eye. All you have to do is put each of your index fingers and thumb together to form a diamond. Kairi did as he instructed, and Sora nodded. Now, place them as far as you can, still forming a diamond, and have an object in the center. She chose the right floating coconut, staring straight at it through her outstretched fingers. Now, Sora instructed, bring your hands over to your face slowly, making sure that your object stays in the center. Now, which eye are your hands over? Carrie's face radiated amazement. Her hands were over her right eye. The right one, she said quickly. Sora nodded slowly. That means your right eye is dominant. Now try burning them again, except this time close your left eye. She pointed the Oathkeeper back at the middle coconut and closed her left eye. She was astounded. I've really been aiming to the left the whole time. Fire! She yelled, and the 3 fireballs shot out, each of them hitting smack dab in the center of each coconut. Kairi pumped her fists in jubilation. I did it, she squealed before turning to Sora and giving him a peck on the cheek. 60 points, she said slyly. I win. They landed in front of Kairi's house shortly after, making sure nobody saw them along the trip. Kairi looked past Sora towards the setting sun. It's beautiful, she said wistfully, her heart melting at the red and purple golden light. It makes me love this place so much. Such a pleasant sunset. Sora turned and stood beside Kairi, gazing to the west. It is beautiful, he said. He turned his head and found himself lost in Kairi's eyes. He felt himself falling in love with the angel beside him all over again. Not as beautiful as you. They leaned together and kissed, breaking their heavenly bliss only for a breath. Kairi snuggled close on his shoulders as he hugged her. I wish we could be together like this forever, she said softly into his ripped shirt. I missed you so much when I couldn't remember you, and even more when I finally did. Sora softly hushed her. It's okay now, Kairi, he cooed. Our hearts are connected. We'll always be together. We don't need some silly palpu fruit for that to happen. She smiled at him as she lifted her head off his shoulder, losing herself in his warm, handsome face. Promise? She asked. Sora leaned in and kissed her before answering. Promise. A gold light engulfed Sora before passing to Kairi. Sora? Kairi asked slowly. What was Naminé doing in your head? Sora chuckled and shrugged. Well, she was beating up Roxas, he answered, but his yelps of pain ceased a while ago. I wonder what they were doing. We shared our first kiss, but don't tell Sora I said that, Naminé telepathically said to Kairi. And it's about time you got inside. Mom will be worried. Kairi smiled at his bemused expression, trying to figure out what the nobodies did, and lightly kissed her on the cheek. I have to go inside now, she said, but I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, Sora replied, kissing her on the cheek. See you tomorrow, Kai. He began floating off the ground and started to glide away. Kairi suddenly got an idea. Hey, Sora, she called. He turned onto his back and slowed his pace. Yeah, he asked, almost coming to a mid-air stop. What would happen if you stopped thinking of me? Even though he was distant, Kairi could tell he smiled. He floated to the left a bit over soft grass. Sora plopped onto the ground, landing hard on his butt despite the grass. Kairi laughed. How did I know? She thought to herself. Sora was calling back to her. What would happen to you if you stopped thinking of me and you were flying? Kairi wrapped her arms around herself. I'd fall, she said quietly, but still loud enough for him to hear. Sora nodded and decided that even though it was slower, he'd rather walk today. Kairi watched him walk into the sun before turning around and opening her door. I'm home, she called. The voice of her mother greeted her. How was your day, dear? She asked, walking to viewing range of the front hallway. She had brown hair tied up in a bun, green eyes, and a rosy face. She was wearing a light green t-shirt and white jeans. Her jade eyes grew wide in horror as she saw the state of her daughter's uniform. It was ripped, torn, burned in some places. What happened to you? Did someone attack you? Why are your clothes wrecked so? Kairi looked quizzically at her mother before looking herself over, and she smacked herself in realization. I'm not going to tell her the whole truth, she thought. She'd never let me go to school again. Remember when Naminé and I told you about Bob yesterday? She asked. Her mother nodded, her lips tightening. Kairi sighed. Well, he came by again this morning, and he had some friends with him. Her mother's eyes grew wide in shock as she grew Kairi's arm. Come, I'm taking you to the hospital. You must be traumatized. You must be so hurt. She looked at Carrie's face. There was no sign of wincing or pain upon it. "Wait a minute, you don't have a scratch on you. How come your uniform is ripped and torn, but you aren't hurt?" Carrie lightly removed her mother's slack fingers from her arm and smiled. "Sora arrived after I lost our scuffle. He used a Thundara spell and lightly electrocuted him." Her smile widened. "Bob then agreed not to come after me again. Sora then used a cure spell to heal my injuries." Janet softened and hugged Carrie. "I knew there was a reason I liked Sora," she chuckled. "I just have no idea why your father hates him." They broke apart. "I don't know either," Carrie said, walking into the living room. She looked around and could not see her father. "Hey, where is Dad?" she asked her mother, who had returned to the kitchen. Janet chuckled. "He's still at the office, dear. He's working late again tonight," she said. "You know your father, always working until he drops. We're lucky that he got off yesterday and tomorrow." Carrie nodded, remembering. Her mother continued, "So it's just you and me again tonight. Anyway, apart from Bob, how's your day?" Carrie was glad that her mother couldn't see her face as it suddenly became dreamy. All memories of what happened previously in school that day had been momentarily wiped from her mind as she remembered that first kiss, how it made her feel when he was near, how every time he touched her tingles went down her spine, how simple smiles on his face made her fall in love all over again and take all sensation away. "It was wonderful," Carrie said breathlessly after a prolonged pause. Janet raised her eyebrows. "Does wonderful have anything to do with Sora?" Carrie froze in place. "Oh no," she thought. "Does Mom know? How can she?" "Sora?" she choked out. Janet laughed. "Yes, Sora, you know," she teased. "You know, swirling blue eyes, spiky brown hair. Known since you showed up on the islands. Oh, Princess of Radiant Garden." Carrie's eyes grew wide in shock. She whipped her head around, red hair twirling. "How do you know that I'm a princess, or even that I somehow came from Radiant Garden?" Janet smiled warmly. "Name told me after you got home in a huff that day." Carrie narrowed her eyes. "How much did she tell you?" Her mother smiled warmly before turning back to making supper. "Everything." Carrie stood up and walked slowly to her mother. "Go upstairs and get changed out of that torn outfit. I doubt you'll be able to wear it to school tomorrow." Carrie nodded and began to walk upstairs when a thought came to her head. She turned when halfway up. Mom," she asked slowly, "by everything, do you mean everything?" Janet nodded and smiled at her red-headed daughter. Carrie turned and walked upstairs, removing her sticky clothes, deciding it was best to take a shower before heading down for dinner. As the soft water lathered and cleansed her body, Naminé faded in downstairs next to her mother. Janet turned to her while stir-fry vegetables. "So, did Sora have anything to do with today being wonderful?" she asked. Naminé placed her hands on her hips. "I'll let her tell you. And aren't you being a little nosy?" Janet laughed. So is her friend Selfie, but I'm still a teenage girl at heart. "So did Sora have anything to do with it?" "I didn't say that," Naminé retaliated before becoming a mist. Janet chuckled. "I wonder what happened," she said to herself. Carrie woke bright and early the next morning, ready to face the day. A smile filled her cheeks as she remembered yesterday's events. "I can't believe Sora and Riku went through after what we were separated again," she thought in admiration. Semnis was one really tough cookie to beat. She looked at her torn uniform before taking her mother's advice. Looking into her wardrobe, she began the arduous teenage ritual of deciding what to wear. Half an hour later, she finally decided on an outfit that worked. A white shell halter top with a pair of white jean shorts. Satisfied, she walked downstairs for breakfast. Her father had already left, and her mother was getting ready to leave for her own job at the fabric store. She approached a yawning Kyrie and kissed her forehead. You look lovely, dear," she said in parting. Have fun at school. Your father and I will be at the party this afternoon." Kyrie looked up at her mother with affection. "Have a good day at work, Mom," she said, giving her a hug. "I'll head straight for the party after school." Janet walked out the door. "Bye, honey," she called, letting the door shut. Carrie smiled. "I'm lucky to have a mom like her," she thought, tucking it into a bowl of porridge. She ate in relative silence, having a pleasant conversation with Naminé about nothing in particular. Putting her empty bowl in the dishwasher, she retrieved her backpack and left the house, making sure to lock the front door. She turned around and took in a deep breath, sighing at the beauty in the early morning, listening to bird calls. Carrie, she turned her head to see Sora walking up to her, waving his hand. He was wearing his regular black and blue adventuring outfit, always with his silver crown pendant on his chest. He approached her, and she lightly pecked his cheek. "How do you always smell so good?" he asked, inhaling a deep breath through his nose. Carrie giggled and dodged the question. "Obviously your mother didn't like the state of your uniform either," she said as she started walking. He shook his head. "No," he said calmly before barking a laugh. She thought that Heartless or Nobodies had appeared and we were attacked. Carrie laughed at the absurdity of the statement. "Honestly, why would Heartless attack now? There aren't any plots to take Kingdom Hearts, otherwise the king would have told us." Sora smirked. "That's why I told her," she said as they rose over the hill overlooking the school. Sora looked fondly at the concrete building in the early morning light. It glowed golden. "I wonder if Miss Botterill had got a chance to read our stories yet." "I'm giving you both 0 on the assignment," Mrs. Botterill said sternly. Sora and Carrie were in her office. Their first block had ended, and she wanted to speak to them about the assignment. As of now, their faces changed from one of confusion to one of shock. "What?" Carrie choked out. "Why?" "You didn't do the assignment," she stated simply. "You two wrote me novels on adventures with beings that couldn't possibly exist. You're both fortunate you turned them in when you did. You have the opportunity now to do the assessment right. I want to know what you did over the summer, not something you dreamed up." But, Sora began, "our stories are so interrelated and it would be impossible to make that all up in 2 days. As for being so interrelated, you two obviously collaborated in order to avoid actually doing the assignment." She sighed before looking at the two kindly. "If you misunderstood my directions, I can go over them again and you can redo it." Carrie shook her head. "Mrs. Botterill, you don't understand," she tried to reason. "We actually did all that stuff. Didn't you hear about what happened yesterday?" Word had spread throughout the school about the simulation fight between both the students and staff like wildfire. Sora and Kyrie had fan clubs that sprung up overnight, and they thankfully had arrived at school before too many other people did. The teacher's face hardened. "Preposterous," she retorted. "Now I don't care if you think you can pass this off as what you did over the summer, but I want you to hear what you really did, no matter how boring it is." Mrs. Botterill's face softened again as she looked at the angry teens. "On a side note, I'd like to ask for your permission to get these published." Sora and Kyrie's faces slid from anger to disbelief. "Why?" they asked slowly. "Because," Mrs. Botterill explained, "even though I'm giving you both a 0 on the assignment, until you give me the truth, I couldn't put your work down after I started reading it yesterday. I have a feeling they could become bestsellers." Carrie looked at Sora, confused wonder in her eyes. "We can make money from telling our story?" she asked. Sora shrugged. "Worth a shot," he thought, "even though they might not believe us." Carrie seemed to get his message just by the look on his face. She turned back to their teacher. "Go ahead." Mrs. Botterill nodded and began shooing them from her office when a question popped into her head. "I have a question, though," she said. "Did you two read each other's work?" They shook their heads, wondering why she would ask that. They left the office, leaving their English teacher to speculate how everything could be pieced together too well without them even looking at each other's work. Most of the day passed without event, although Sora noticed the sky darkening a little during gym. He shrugged it off, preferring not to dwell on it. Arriving in their Block 4 class, right after starting acids and bases in chemistry, in which Sora had little experiment with thunder magic that Harry only saw, they were greeted by a cheering class and a Yuffie who was clinging her side a little, wearing her attire. "Oh," she moaned, "I ate too much pie yesterday with Riku." Carrie raised an eyebrow at her teacher as Sora went to entertain Tayasamaka. "What were you doing eating pie with Riku?" she asked. Yuffie belched a small burp. "Excuse me, he needed help getting rid of the 15 pies he had ready in case you two chose cherry pie for the party, so I offered to help him out." She couldn't stifle a tiny giggle. "Don't tell him, Carrie, but I think I'm starting to like him." Carrie took the hint and raised one of her hands to her lips, drawing it to the other side, making a small zipping sound. Yuffie nodded. "Good," she said. "Good. Hey, if you two are done, Axel said his red hoodie Axel in his red hoodie called from across the room. We have a class to teach her. Sora, Kairi, come here too. Yuffie smiled and grabbed Kairi's hand, dragging her over to Axel as Sora cautiously staggered up. He looked inquisitively at Kairi, who was just as confused as he was before they were spun around to face the class. These two are going to help us teach today, Axel announced. Sora pulled himself out of Axel's grip and spun around. What? He asked, shocked. Axel raised his hands to defense. Hey, it wasn't my idea. It was the headmaster's. I know you two guys are the best here, but I would have never thought of having you two teach. Sora sighed. There would be no escaping it if the headmaster ordered it. What would we have to do? Kairi asked in resignation. Split into groups, Yuffie ordered. Sophie, Brittany, you're one group. Titus, Michael, you're group 2. Waka, John, you guys are group 3. Axel will instruct Titus and Michael. I'll instruct group 3. Sora and Kairi, you can instruct Sophie and Brittany. The students left to grab their weapons from the chest by the dense metal door, and Axel gave Sora and Kairi 2 more wooden swords. Sorry about this, you guys, Yuffie said quietly, but orders are orders. Sora looked up. Don't worry about it, he said, pounding his chest. We can handle it. He added a little bit, his last bit in an undertone. I hope. Sophie and Brittany lined up, facing each other before turning to their 2 teachers. Well, Kairi stated, let's see what you've got. Go for it. Spar. Sophie nodded and turned to her opponent, determined to prove herself in front of Sora and Kairi. She shook hands with Brittany before getting into a fighting stance. She wanted to show them what she was made of, and began with a powerful blow from over her head. Brittany jumped back in time to avoid the wooden blade crashing to her head. She raised her weapon and quickly hit Sophie to the side. It was over before it began. Kairi and Sora shook their heads in their hands. You should have never given her the opportunity, Sophie, Sora said as he approached her. Sophie's eyes began to tear up. She had failed to impress him. Now that he was a sought-after community, Sora noticed the tears, but could not determine the cause. Hey, don't cry, he said, comforting her. Lots of people make mistakes when they first start out. It looked to me that your problem there was overconfidence. Sophie shook her head as Kairi walked up to try and offer her support. That wasn't it, Sophie leaked out. It was because I want to impress you, Sora. Sora and Kairi were stunned. Sophie, why did you want to impress Sora? Kairi asked quizzically. Sophie shook her head, refusing to meet her eyes. I want to impress you because half the girls in this school suddenly have a crush on you. Really? Sora said in disbelief. I didn't know that, but Sophie, why would you want to impress me? I love Kairi. I know that, she sniffled out, but I thought that if you saw I could fight too, then Kairi finished for her, realization striking her like a dead fish. Then Sora would miraculously dump me and chase after you, she said, hands on her hips. She shook her head and let out an exasperated sigh. Sophie, why don't you try to woo Titus or Waka or John? Brittany rudely interrupted Kairi. You stay away from John, she said angrily. He is mine. Sophie glared angrily at Brittany, raising her sword. I'll try to date whoever I want, she said, taking the challenge and waving her sword. Don't waste everything in a powerful blow, whispered out of the corner of his mouth. That leaves you wide open if you miss. Use quick thrust slashes that are easy to recover if they are parried instead, Kairi quietly advised. Sophie nodded and threw herself at her foe, a flurry of slashes preceding her. Sora grabbed Kairi and leapt out of the way as Brittany wildly retaliated, forcing Sophie to pull back. Move your feet, Kairi advised as Sophie attempted to stand her ground under the barrage. It's better to give up ground and be able to defend yourself and come back than stand in one place and fall to a blow you're unable to block. Brittany gasped as Sophie pulled back and threw a slash. She had to arch her back and twist to avoid it. Now she was on the defensive. Why are you guys helping her and not both of us? She gasped. Because you seem to know what you're doing, Sora said before looking at Kairi. When did you learn so much? He asked quietly. She smiled and pecked his cheek. When I was training, she replied, so only he could hear. I read The Art of War and applied it to single combat. Sora nodded. I love you, he said quietly, turning his attention back to the fight. Kairi smiled and hugged him with one arm. I know, she replied. Why did you say that now? Sora looked down sadly as Sophie began fleeing. He began before sighing. Being gone for a year and coming back to find that I did love you made me realize how often I should have told you. So I'm going to remind you at least once a day that I do." Carrie smiled, noticing that Sophie had regained her courage, and sweating Brittany on the ropes. "I don't need reminding," she said, before grabbing his neck and quickly kissing him. Sora was shocked, but passionately worked his magic on her, his fingers dancing on her back, sending electric tingles down her spine. "But," she began, breaking apart, "a reminder is always nice. I love you too, you lazy bum." So she looked back to Sophie, who was about to deliver the finishing blow and win. "I'm still a lazy bum," Sora chuckled as Carrie rested her head on his shoulders. "You slept for a year," she said, as Brittany's weak squeal of pain signified that Sophie won. "You'll always be my lazy bum." The party was held that night on the field outside the school. Every member of Sora and Carrie's Black 4 class had invited, as well as the Blitzball team, Riku, his mother and father, Sora's mother, Carrie's parents, any member of the faculty who wished to come, and anyone from any teacher's class who the news was leaked to, which was quite a few people. Axel and Yuffie were dishing out the creme brulee, and people all around were drinking punch and dancing to music. Axel had set up a big screen television upon which Sora and Carrie's duel with Xemnas would later be displayed. Carrie's parents arrived amid the splendor to see Carrie dancing in her white halter top with Sora, him twirling her around as they were dancing quick to the quick tune. Thankfully for Carrie, it wasn't a slow song, and they weren't slow dancing, or else Seymour would have shrugged it off when Janet laid a hand on his steaming shoulder. "Let them have fun, honey," she said slowly. "After all, it is their party." Seymour humphed as they made their way to the food where Anne was waiting for them. "What did they even do to deserve a party?" he said sourly. "Don't be such a sourpuss, Seymour," Anne sighed, shoving his shoulder. "Don't you remember parties we had when we were teenagers?" "Of course I do," he growled, taking a sip of punch. "But I didn't have a teenage daughter then." Anne and Janet giggled as Axel and Yuffie ran up to the stage. "All right," Axel yelled into the mic. "You all having fun yet?" Many shouts came from the crowd. "I said, are you having fun yet?" Axel yelled out, and the crowd screamed its approval. "As long as you don't say, got it memorized, I'll be having fun," Sora yelled up to him. The crowd laughed, and Axel waved his hand, looking down with a grin. "Good one," Riku said next to Sora and Kairi. "Just keep quiet, Roxas. All right, as some of you already know, we are here to party and watch an awesome recording of a fight that occurred in the simulator yesterday." He paused for applause. "But what many of you don't know is that we're also here to celebrate those two combatants finally hooking up. So let's all give a hand to Sora and Kairi. Got that memorized?" Axel grinned as the two teens blushed and looked around as the spotlight came on them. "Geez, I feel like I'm the groom at the wedding reception," Sora whispered to Kairi. She smiled warmly. "Well, then why don't we play the part and give them what they want?" she asked shyly. Sora took the hint and wrapped his arm around her waist, bringing her in as they kissed amid the many whoops, hollers, and whistles. Seymour could feel his blood boiling as his wife and Anne began whispering to each other as how they knew it was inevitable and what a cute couple they made. "Now," Yuffie roared into the microphone, "let's take a look at the clip." She raised her hand and clicked the play button on the remote as she held. The scene in the simulator began unfolding straight from the beginning, with the gang atop the altar of knots. Seymour didn't even spare a glance at the screen as he barged into the crowd, grabbing Kairi by the arm and pulling her back to her mother and Anne, hotly pursued by Sora and Riku. "What the hell are you doing?" they all asked Seymour quietly, as to not disturb everyone watching the simulation. "Is there a problem?" Axel asked as he and Yuffie left the stage and saw them congregating. "Of course there's a problem," Seymour growled, pointing a finger at Sora. "That boy is with my daughter." Yuffie looked at him skeptically. "What's the problem with that? Don't you love Kairi, Sora?" Sora looked deeply into Kairi's blue eyes and inhaled the sweet scent of her perfume. "Yeah," he said breathlessly, "more than anything." Anne gazed fondly at her son before turning her attention to Seymour. "So, what's the problem?" she asked, repeating Yuffie's question. Seymour's expression hardened as he looked at Anne. I don't like him, he snarled at her, and glared at Seymour, fire in her eyes. So my son's not good enough for you? She growled, daggers flying in between their eyes. Sora saw Carrie's eyes and whiten and begin to tear up in fear. He quickly embraced her and began stroking her back in a comforting gesture. It's okay, he softly cooed. Everything's going to be fine. Seymour flashed his eyes at the two, hearing Sora's words. He charged at them like the beast and ripped them apart, tears shining on both their faces. Stay away from my daughter, boy, he snapped. I won't have you date her as long as I live. Riku got in between them and the other two. Hey, back off, man, he snarled. They have a right to be together after all the hell that Maleficent and the organization put them through. Janet cautiously approached her husband, hurting at every tear she saw on her daughter's face. Seymour, why do you hate Sora so? His eyes flashed in outrage at the group around him. Why? I'll tell you why, he snarled. That boy has the nerve to leave these islands without word to his mother, his teachers, his headmaster, or even me, the mayor. He goes off gallivanting around the world on some perilous quest to save them from darkness, and doesn't immediately try to save my daughter, who he supposedly loves. Then after he wins, he's got the guts to go to sleep for a year and make everyone forget about him. When he wakes up, he still isn't done. Meanwhile, everyone suddenly remembers him, and his mother is worried sick with grief. His involvement in the affairs of the other worlds caused my daughter to get kidnapped by some vile organization. Watch what you say about the Organization 13, Axel snarled. It may be gone, but Roxas and I have some fond memories of our time in it. Then he arrives with some giant animal off-worlders without a care in the world as to how much school he has missed, Seymour continued unabated, or how worried everyone was about him. He is the most irresponsible boy I've ever met. At least Riku would be able to protect my daughter. Carrie's eyes hardened at her father's words, her tears becoming ones of anger. Riku looked down ashamedly. I kidnapped Carrie for the enemy, he muttered quietly. I didn't save her. Sora did. Irresponsible, Carrie cried out in rage, touched at Riku's honesty while still angry at her father. Sora's the most responsible young man in the universe. He has safety of the worlds on his shoulders. He has hundreds of people who depend on him for the world's safety. You only run the towns on these islands. You don't protect them from harm. Her eyes glistened as she walked towards Sora and grasped his hand. I love him, and he has the right to fight again. I'll fight too. Seymour gasped while everyone else beamed at her. No, he ordered, making a grab for her wrist. She dodged it and faced him, summoning the Oathkeeper into her hands. You see this? Carrie asked, pointing her blade at Seymour. This is the Oathkeeper. I gave Sora my good luck charm in Traverse Town, and he placed down his Keyblade, creating this weapon. He named it Oathkeeper because he made an oath to come back to me and bring back my lucky charm back. Now it's a name that serves as a dual purpose, because we made a promise to each other. Her grip tightened as she arrayed herself into a readied stance, and I intend to keep that oath. Seymour laughed. You would fight your own father? He asked. Father? She growled. What father have you been? You haven't been there for me. Mom has. When I was grieving the loss of my memory of Sora, you would listen. Only Mom would. You rarely see me. You're always working at the office. When you do see me, you rarely ask how my day was. Only who I've been with and making sure I was home before curfew. All you ever do is eat, sleep, and drink and watch old tapes of sphere casts of blitzball games. I have received love from everyone here except you. Maybe because I'm not really a child, just a princess from another world. Everyone looked stunned except Seymour. Carrie, Sora said slowly. What a terrible thing to say. She looked at him, anger still in her eyes. Well, it's true, she retorted. Seymour started laughing. So what if you have a weapon? You probably don't even know how to use it. You can't hurt me. Axel recovered from his shock first. Actually, he started ruffling Carrie's threaded hair. She's the top of the class. Carrie and Sora looked at him, stunned, before either of them could ask. Axel raised his hand. You're getting graded differently, Roxas. Sora raised an eyebrow. And why's that? He asked arrogantly. Axel pulled a silver book out of his hoodie. Need I remind you, oh, Master of the Keyblade? He chuckled before opening the book. Let's see, he said, flipping through the pages. Here we go. Heartless. Shadows defeated. 1,237. Soldiers defeated. 784. Oh, where are the few good ones? Oh, Armored Knights. 5,236. Rapid Thrusters defeated. Oh my. 24,942. No wonder there are so many hearts in our Kingdom Hearts. Need I continue? He asked, snapping the book shut. Seymour looked skeptically at Axel. Fine, so Sora can protect my daughter. Kairi interrupted him. I'm not your daughter, he continued as if nothing had happened. But that doesn't mean that she can fight. As a response, Yuffie jabbed the thumb at the screen. Seymour looked up and eyes grew wide in horror. The screen was currently playing the section of the simulation where Sora, Kairi, and Simulation Riku were fighting Xemnas on his throne. Seymour's tongue grew dry as he witnessed Sora and Kairi deliver the finishing blows to his chest and neck. He watched as the scene atop the altar unfolded, including Kairi's proclamation that she and Sora would be together every day. Tears actually glistened in his eyes as he saw rips in her uniform, blood flowing down her skin as they took to the air. In silence they watched until the final blow was struck and Xemnas finally disappeared. Seymour was on his knees, choking down the hot, salty tears. I never knew, he choked amid the pause. I never knew how much you all suffered just to get back home together. I mean, I thought I knew, but you thought that it was all just some fantasy that we were making up, Riku asked coldly. That we were lying through our teeth the whole time and feeding you sweet tales of adventure, never once saying how close any of us were to dying when we fought. Well, we wouldn't give you the gruesome details of every battle, and we wouldn't tell you of how many times we almost lost. We knew all of you would be worried sick and rush us straight to the hospital and keep us there for a year if we told you about some of our wounds. Riku lifted up the left side of his shirt to reveal a scar about 5 inches long running from the side to his chest. I got this scar from the battle with Xemnas, he said. Sora flinched and looked down at his side, but no one noticed except for Riku, who continued as if he hadn't. That time Sora had been in Kairi's position in the simulation run, he was the one whose Xemnas was trying to steal a heart from, and he was the one who almost lost his head there. I blocked the attack with my body, and this is the reward from it. Believe it or not, Zexion was harder. He didn't look like a fighter carrying a book, but the pages he sent me from it were razor sharp, and I was all alone. Seymour wiped the tears from his face with his sleeve before standing up and looking at Kairi. Kairi, forgive me, he said. I know I haven't been that much of a father to you, probably for the reasons you gave me, but I understand if you don't want to, but could you possibly give me a second chance? He pleaded. Kairi dismissed the Oathkeeper and looked at her father, tears in her eyes. All I wanted was a father who cared for me, she said quietly. Seymour looked heartbroken at what he had done, but Kairi suddenly rushed at him and hugged him. Everyone deserves a second chance, Dad. Use yours wisely. Her father placed his hands on her back and hugged her. Don't worry, my dear, he said softly. I will. From now on, you two have my blessing. Everyone released a collective sigh of relief as Kairi squealed in delight and rushed at Sora, giving him a passionate kiss now that they could truly be together. Riku glanced away from the two as he suddenly felt a dark presence that was very familiar. Sorry to break up this heartfelt reunion, he said, but we've got trouble. Sora and Kairi broke apart. Trouble? What kind of trouble? Before Riku could answer, a shadow leapt up from the ground and charged at the two. Before either of them could react, Riku had drawn way to the dawn and sliced the Heartless in half. A cloud of darkness remained as they stood there. Heartless trouble, Riku yelled. Sora and Kairi needed no further encouragement. Kairi brought the Oathkeeper back out while Sora summoned forth the Oblivion. Axel pulled out his chakrams in a spectacle of fire, and Yuffie grabbed her large shuriken. All weapons training students and teachers listen up, Axel yelled into the crowd as Sora, Kairi, Riku, and Yuffie began running around trying to set up a perimeter from which they could successfully defend the crowd. We're under siege by Heartless. I need all of you to wait patiently while I return with weapons for you all. Don't do anything stupid. The crowd laughed as Axel made his proclamation. They had never heard of anything more ludicrous. Under siege by what? They were still laughing when two shadows approached the edge of the crowd. Watch out, Axel yelled, pointing his finger towards the shadows. They looked in all directions he was pointing and began to panic. Axel shook his head before a demented look acclaimed his visage. He twirled his chakrams in the air in front of him, fire spinning out from around them. Burn! He shouted mightily. His chakrams sped towards each shadow and tore them to pieces, fires crackling merrily within the darkness. They flew back to him as the Heartless burned in puffs of smoke. The crowd settled as he looked over them again. Now, stay put and stay calm. Roxas, Princess, get over here. I need you to keep this side safe until I return. Sora viciously slashed the shadow to pieces, a cloud of darkness remaining. Sure thing, Axel, he yelled, motioning for Kairi to follow him. And don't call me Roxas. Titus looked in awe at the two as they made their way through the crowd. Those weapons are real, he stuttered as he passed by. Kairi half-turned running. What, the Keyblades? Of course they're real. Mrs. Botterill happened to be in the front and overheard them. They were telling the truth, she realized, and when she saw them flash past, Sora, Kairi, she called loudly as they took up their positions. What now? Sora asked angrily. I was wrong. You both get 100 on the assignments. Sora grinned as they nodded at her before looking around. There were Heartless here, all right. Only a couple dozen, though, and all of them were simple shadows. Time to take care of business, Sora stated as he charged at the little shadows, taking each out in a single slash of his keyblade. They were far too weak for Sora to string up together any combos or do any type of finishing move. Before Sora could really even begin, he slayed every Heartless in his sight. He looked around as he removed his eyes from the tufts of darkness that remained. Kairi was just finishing the last of her group, and Riku and Yuffie had finished off the Heartless attacking them. Kairi walked up to Sora, confusion striking her. This can't be all of them, right? There's no way this could be everything. They were too easy. He crossed his arm thinking. Something's up. All true, right, Key Bear? A voice from above them said. Something is up. Sora and Kairi looked skywards and saw a woman with blue hair wearing an Organization 13 cloak hovering above them. Hey, Sora yelled. I thought I got rid of all you guys. The woman laughed and brushed her sleeves. That you did, Sora, but thieves were hanging around our base, and my master Maleficent thought it best to guard myself and my companion in something familiar to you. Kairi's eyes widened in horror. Maleficent, she gasped. The woman looked at her and gave an even smile. Ah, I see you're here too, Princess. Good, that makes my job easier. Sora looked at confusion at her previous statement. Wait, companion? That means there's more of you? She laughed. Yes, I have a companion. Please forgive me if I have forgotten my manners. My name is Cosex, the Thought Crusher. I'm a nobody, and I hope you remember us well. She cackled evilly and waved her hand as 4 dusks and 2 samurai surrounded Sora and Kairi. Roxas faded. Don't worry, you two, Roxas said after seeing the samurai. I've got this. He looked at the samurai who were now advancing towards Sora and Kairi. You two, he ordered the samurai, kill off those dusks. Miraculously, the samurai nodded and drew their katanas, slicing each nobody. Cosex raised her eyebrows. Ah, number 13. Such an honor to meet you, she said mockingly, giving him a low bow. Can it, nobody? Roxas yelled. I'm no longer associated with them, she chuckled. Of course you aren't. Yet you still maintain control of the samurai nobodies. That speaks volume about whether you are or not, Cosex said sarcastically. Roxas growled at her, his face contorted in anger. Hey guys, I'm back, Axel yelled, looking a large space sack over his back. He quickly looked up and spotted Cosex. Oh crap, he muttered. Students and teachers, grab a weapon from the sack. Everyone else flee. Everyone began to panic as Axel gave his orders to flee. Sora, Kairi, go seal the keyhole and get the hell off the islands. Head for the castle. They looked confused at Axel. But why? Sora asked. Axel shook his head angrily. Don't ask questions. Go! He ordered. They looked back at their parents. Anne nodded. We don't want you to go, she said slowly, but if you must, you must. Go. Save the world. Make us proud. Sora smiled at his mother as she blew a kiss towards her. He began sprinting off towards the beach. Kairi and Roxas hot on his heels. Not so fast! Cosex screamed as she pointed her hands at the 3. Mind Crush! Sora and Roxas doubled over in agony, clutching their heads. Kairi was unaffected as she ran past the 2. Come on, Sora, she called over her shoulder before seeing him writhing on the ground. Sora, she yelled in anxiety, rushing at him as Naminé suddenly burst in and ran at Roxas. She skidded to a halt about next to her love and leaned over him. Sora, get up! Get up! We have to get out of here! Sora cried in agony. The pain on his brain was too much. Roxas was equally disturbed in pain. He had already suffered mental pain when he was regaining his own memories, but it was nothing like what he felt now. Kairi seemed to forget things happening all around them as she held Sora in her arms. She didn't notice the hordes of Heartless appearing, Axel arriving to defend them and shouting his head off, or even the lights cascading from her fingertips that seemed to be healing Sora of the pain. All she could see was the blur was Sora slowly regaining his consciousness, the pain receding. My head feels like it's been in a vice, he said slowly, standing up. Carrie laughed and hugged him. You're okay, she said softly, her words caressing the weakened Sora. If you two are quite done, Axel snapped, burning 6 shadows away as Titus swiped at 2 more. Go and seal the keyhole and head to Disney Castle. We have a gummy ship waiting for you on the peak of the island you guys play on. Sora nodded, regaining his composure, as Roxas faded back into him, having been healed by Naminé in the same fashion. Come on, Sora, Carrie said, racing into the air. Sora began sprinting before leaping into the air. Time was of the essence. We have to get away from Cossacks as fast as we can, he bellowed, trying to overcome the wind in his voice. I don't know what will happen if she does that again. Carrie nodded and flew just behind and under him, ready to catch it should he fall. Little did they know what Cossacks was being held at bay, only through the combined efforts of Riku and Yuffie and Axel. Sora sped over the waves as fast as he could, ignoring the sea prey that wet his face. So he was flying so fast, within seconds he had already landed by the hole that led into his secret place. Carrie plopped on the ground beside him, paging the exertion of flying so quickly. Sora pulled out the Oblivion as they entered. The large brown door with no handle was waiting for them, a shiny blue outline of a keyhole upon it. Sora raised his keyblade, and the golden stars came out of nowhere and circled the tip, emitting a beam of white light that shot straight into the keyhole. You heard a metallic click as the keyhole to their world was sealed, and the keyhole along with the door faded away, leaving only the keyhole's imprint upon the gray stone. Sora turned to go. It was done. Never again would their world be destroyed. Outside, Sora looked up to see a red and yellow ship residing on their island's peak. He chuckled. I wonder why we never noticed the high wind, he asked out of the blue, rising into the sky. Carrie followed, praying that Cossacks was not stalking them. Hurry, Carrie called as they ascended. She may be after us. They landed and Sora dashed in, raising the landing ramp with all the speed possible. Hurrying onto the bridge, Sora sat himself down in the captain's chair and strapped himself in. Powering up the ship's engines, Carrie looked lost as she watched Sora making all the necessary preparations and pre-flight diagnostic checks. She slowly walked towards one of the chairs flanking him and sat down, awed by the appearance of the ship's bridge. Blinking lights were everywhere, and Sora was staring down at a console covered in buttons. His face screwed up in look in anxious anticipation. Carrie peered out of the large transparent dome they were in. We're ready to go, Sora said as he powered up the engines. He grabbed the controls and started acceleration of their world. Engines at full throttle, he said as the ship flew through the air at intense speed, pressing Carrie back into her chair because of the forces at work on her body. It finally reaches the dark depths of space. The pressure stopped, and Carrie rose from her seat to look at their home. Sora unbuckled himself and put the high wind on autopilot, racing from his own chair to stand next to Carrie. There were tears in her eyes, and she looked at their home, at their quickly shrinking islands. Sora had only seen a world covered in darkness before, but he had never thought of the same thing could happen on his own home, as it did in the then Hollow Bastion. Will we ever see them again? She asked quietly, barely above a whisper. Sora took her hand in his and lightly kissed it, his eyes meeting hers. Don't worry, Kai, he cooed softly. We'll see it again. I know we will. Carrie wept openly, hugging Sora as their world vanished into a small speck of light. I know we will. Riku, he thought to himself, make sure we do. Cossacks strode angrily into the meeting hall in the castle that never was. Maleficent, Pete's son PJ, and another cloaked figure were waiting for her. Maleficent was not happy when she entered, but concealed her anger. You have failed me, Cossacks, she stated. I thought you told me that turning Sora into a Heartless would be a mere trifle. And where's the princess I asked for? Cossacks glared at her. Don't talk to me about her, she spat. It's because of that girl, her nobody, and their friends, the king's lackeys, that brat got away. I hate her! She somehow was unaffected by my mind-breaking powers, and she could heal Sora of the agony. Cossacks banged her fist on the table in front of her. Maleficent smirked. I thought she might be immune, she postulated. It is because of the light inside her that she is unaffected. The light calms, soothes, and caresses her mind, leaving it shielded from external disturbances. Kosix wheeled angrily to face Maleficent. Then why didn't you tell me that? She snapped, eyes blazing. I wasn't entirely sure myself, but the fact that she can heal, and probably even present your powers, might be taking effect on Sora is a problem. He pounded his chest. If you had sent me, he began, that Sora would be heartless by now. Nobody messes with the mighty Pete. Maleficent glared at him. You, she spat. You have failed in every task I have given you. You couldn't even turn Master Yan Sin into a heartless. If I'd sent you, Sora wouldn't be writhing in pain. He would have been writhing in laughter, you useless imbecile. PJ and the cloaked man sniggered. What are you laughing at, boy? He asked his son, affronted. Well, Pop, PJ began, after all I've heard, you kind of have gotten whooped. You would have gotten whooped if you tried. Pete raised his fist, about to strike his own son, but suddenly slumped down in defeat. PJ's probably right, he thought glumly. I have gotten beaten a few times by that punk. If Kairi can keep Sora from being affected by her powers, Kosix, Maleficent began, addressing everyone in the room, then we must remove her from the picture long enough for you to grab Sora and bring him to me. I want to turn him into a heartless, personally. At least we know he is powerless to confront you. She dismissed the nobodies with a wave of her hand, and after making sure they were gone, Maleficent's gaze appeared. Go forth, she ordered. Go forth to each world. If you happen to meet Sora, do not engage him. Send a message here, and wait for our nobody friends to arrive. Maleficent cackled. PJ excused himself from the throne. It was not proper for one such as him to be around when Maleficent was cackling her evil cackle. I better tell King Max and King Mickey about this, he thought. And that was Chapter 8, The Party. This was another long chapter. I'm Anime Guy Kotosaki 1. If you wish to be a part of the story, find me on Skype at Anime Guy Kotosaki 1 or message me on Twitter at Anime Guy 01. May the grace of valor protect you.